Chapter 7. So Krishna Book, Chapter 7. The Salvation of Trinivata. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is always full with six opulences, namely complete wealth, complete strength, complete fame, complete knowledge, complete beauty, and complete renunciation. The Lord appears in different complete eternal forms of incarnation. The conditioned soul has immense opportunity to hear about transcendental activities of the Lord in these different incarnations. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Janma karma cha me divyam. The pastimes and activities of the Lord are not material. They are beyond the material conception, and the conditioned soul can benefit by hearing such uncommon activities. Hearing is an opportunity to associate with the Lord. To hear his activities is to evolve one's transcendental nature simply by hearing. The conditioned soul has a natural aptitude to hear something about other conditioned souls in the form of fiction, drama, and novel. That inclination to hear something about others may be utilized in hearing the pastimes of the Lord. Then one can immediately evolve his transcendental nature. Krishna's pastimes are not only beautiful, they are also very pleasing to the mind. If someone takes advantage of hearing the pastimes of the Lord, the material contamination of dust accumulated in the heart due to long association with material nature can be immediately cleansed. Lord Chaitanya also instructed that simply by hearing the transcendental name of Lord Krishna, one can cleanse the heart of all material contamination. There are different processes for self realization, but this process of devotional service, of which hearing is the most important function, when adopted by any conditioned soul, will automatically cleanse him of the material contamination and enable him to realize his real constitutional position. Conditional life is due to this contamination only, and as soon as it is cleared off, then naturally the dormant function of the living entity rendering service to the Lord awakens. By developing his eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord, one becomes eligible to create friendship with the devotees. Maharaj Pariksit recommended from practical experience that everyone try to hear about the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. This Krishna treatise is meant for that purpose, and the reader may take advantage of it to attain the ultimate goal of human life. The Lord, out of his causeless mercy, descends to this material world and displays his activities just like an ordinary man. Unfortunately, the impersonalists or the atheistic class of men consider Krishna to be an ordinary man like themselves, and so they deride him. This is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita by the Lord himself when he says, Avya Jananti Mam Mudham. The Mudas or rascals take Krishna to be an ordinary man or a slightly more powerful man out of their great misfortune. They cannot accept him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes such unfortunate persons misrepresent themselves as incarnations of Krishna without referring to the authorized scriptures. When Krishna grew up a little more, he began to turn himself backside up. He did not merely lie down on his back. And another function was observed by Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, Krishna's first birthday. They arranged for Krishna's birthday ceremony, which is still observed by all followers of the Vedic principles. Krishna's birthday ceremony is observed in India by all Hindus, irrespective of different sectarian views. All the cowherd men and women were invited to participate in the jubilant celebration. A nice band played, and the assembled people enjoyed it. All the learned brahmanas were invited, and they chanted Vedic hymns for the good fortune of Krishna. During the chanting of the Vedic hymns and playing of the bands, Krishna was bathed by Mother Yashoda. This bathing ceremony is technically called Abhishek, and even today this is observed in all the temples of Vrindavan on Janmashtami Day, or the birthday anniversary of Lord Krishna. On this occasion, Mother Yashoda arranged to distribute a large quantity of grain, and first class cows decorated with golden ornaments were made ready to be given in charity to the learned, respectable Brahmanas. Yashoda took her bath and dressed herself nicely, and taking child Krishna, duly dressed and bathed, on her lap, she sat down to hear the Vedic hymns chanted by the Brahmanas. While Mother Yashoda was listening to the chanting of the Vedic hymns, the child appeared to be falling asleep, and therefore she very silently laid him down on the bed. Being engaged in receiving all the friends, relatives, and residents of Vrindavan on that holy occasion, she forgot to feed the child milk. He was crying, being hungry, but Mother Yashoda could not hear him cry because of the various noises. The child, however, became angry because he was hungry and his mother was not paying attention to him. So he lifted his legs and began to kick his lotus feet, just like an ordinary child. Baby Krishna had been placed underneath a hand-driven cart, and while he was kicking his legs, he accidentally touched the wheel of the cart, and it collapsed. Various kinds of utensils and dishes made of brass and other metals had been piled up in the handcart, and they all fell down with a great noise. The wheel of the cart separated from the axle, and the spokes of the wheel were all broken and scattered hither and thither. Mother Yashoda and all the gopis, as well as Maharaj Nanda and the cowherd men, were astonished as to how the cart could have collapsed by itself. All the men and women who were assembled for the holy function crowded around and began to suggest how the cart might have collapsed. No one could ascertain the cause, but some small children who were entrusted to play with baby Krishna informed the crowd that it was due to Krishna striking his feet against the wheel. They assured the crowd that they had seen how it happened with their own eyes, and they strongly asserted the point. Some were listening to the statement of the small children, but others said, "How can you believe the statements of these children?" The cowherd men and women could not understand that the all-powerful personality of Godhead was lying there as a baby, and that he could do anything. Both the possible and impossible were in his power. While the discussion was going on, baby Krishna cried. Without demonstration, Mother Yashoda picked up the child on her lap and called the learned Brahmanas to chant the holy Vedic hymns to counteract the evil spirits. At the same time, she allowed the baby to suck her breast. If a child sucks the mother's breast nicely, it is to be understood that he is out of all danger. After this, all the stronger cowherd men put the broken cart in order, and all the scattered things were set up nicely as before. The Brahmanas thereafter began to offer oblations to the sacrificial fire with yogurt, butter, kusha grass, and water. They worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the good fortune of the child. The Brahmanas who were present at the time were all qualified because they were not envious. They never indulged in untruthfulness. They were never proud. They were non-violent, and they never claimed any false prestige. They were all bona fide Brahmanas, and there was no reason to think that their blessings would be useless. With firm faith in the qualified Brahmanas, Nanda Maharaj took his child on his lap and bathed him with water mixed with various herbs, while the Brahmanas chanted hymns from the Rig, Yajur, and Sam Vedas. It is said that without being a qualified Brahmana, one should not read the mantras of the Vedas. Here is the proof that the Brahmanas were qualified with all the Brahmanical symptoms. Maharaj Nanda also had full faith in them. Therefore, they were allowed to perform the ritualistic ceremonies by chanting the Vedic mantras. There are many different varieties of sacrifices recommended for different purposes, but the mantras are all to be chanted by qualified Brahmanas. And because in this age of Kali such qualified brahmanas are not available, all Vedic ritualistic sacrifices are forbidden. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore recommended only one kind of sacrifice in this age, namely the Sankirtan Yagya or chanting the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As the Brahmanas chanted the Vedic hymns and performed the ritualistic ceremonies for the second time, Nanda Maharaj again gave them huge quantities of grain and many cows. All the cows which were given in charity were covered with nice gold embroidered garments, and their horns were bedecked with golden rings. Their hooves were covered with silver plate, and they wore garland of flowers. He gave so many cows just for the welfare of his wonderful child, and the Brahmanas in return bestowed their heartfelt blessings. And the blessings offered by the able Brahmanas were never to be baffled. One day, shortly after the ceremony, when Mother Yashoda was patching her baby on her lap, the baby felt too heavy, and being unable to carry him, she unwillingly placed him on the ground. After a while, she became engaged in household affairs. At that time, a servant of Kamsa's, known as Trunavata, as instructed by Kamsa, appeared there in the shape of a whirlwind. He picked up the child on his shoulders and raised a great dust storm all over Vrindavan, covering everyone's eyes. Within a few moments, the whole area of Vrindavan became so densely dark that no one could see himself or anyone else. During this great catastrophe, Mother Yashoda could not see her baby, who had been taken away by the whirlwind, and she began to cry very piteously. She fell down on the ground exactly like a cow who had just lost her calf. When Mother Yashoda was so piteously crying, all the cowherd women immediately came and began to look for the baby, but they were disappointed and could not find him. The Trunavata demon went high into the sky with baby Krishna on his shoulder, but the baby assumed such a weight that suddenly he could not go any further, and he had to stop his whirlwind activities. Baby Krishna made himself heavy and began to weigh down the demon, catching hold of his neck. Trunavata felt the baby to be as heavy as a big mountain, and he tried to get out of his clutches, but he was unable to do so, and his eyes popped out from their sockets. Crying very fiercely, he fell to the ground of Vrindavan and died. The demon fell exactly like Tripurasura, who was pierced by the arrow of Lord Shiva. Srinavarta hit a stone slab, and his limbs were smashed. His body became visible to all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. When the gopis saw the demon killed and child Krishna very happily playing on his body, they immediately picked Krishna up with great affection. The cowherd men and women became very happy to get back their beloved child Krishna. At that time, they began to talk about how wonderful it was that the demon had taken away the child to devour him, but could not do so. Instead, he fell down dead. Some of them supported the situation. This is proper because those who are too sinful die from their sinful reactions, and child Krishna is pious. Therefore, he is safe from all kinds of fearful situations. We too must have performed great sacrifices in our previous lives, worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, giving great wealth in charity, and acting philanthropically for the general welfare of men. Because of such pious activities, the child is safe from all danger. The gopis assembled there spoke among themselves what sort of austerities and penances we must have undergone in our previous lives. We must have worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, offered different kinds of sacrifices, made charities, and performed many welfare activities for the public, such as growing banyan trees and excavating wells. As a result of these pious activities, we have gotten back our child, even though he was supposed to be dead. Now he has come back to enliven his relatives. After observing such wonderful happenings, Nanda Maharaj began to think of the words of Vasudeva again and again. After this incident, when the Yashoda once was nursing her child and patting him with great affection, there streamed a profuse supply of milk from her breast. And when she opened the mouth of the child with her fingers, she suddenly saw the universal manifestation within his mouth. She saw within the mouth of Krishna the whole sky, including the luminaries, stars in all directions, the sun, moon, fire, air, seas, islands, mountains, rivers, forests, and all other movable and immovable entities. When Mother Yashoda saw this, her heart began to throb, and she murmured within herself, "How wonderful this is!" She could not express anything, but simply closed her eyes. She was absorbed in wonderful thoughts, Krishna's, showing the universal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even when lying down on the lap of his mother, proves that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whether he is manifested as a child on the lap of his mother or as a charioteer on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The concoction of the impersonalists that one can become God by meditation or by some artificial material activities is herewith declared false. God is always God in any condition or status, and the living entities are always the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They can never be equal to the inconceivable, supernatural power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 7th chapter of Krishna, the salvation of Trinavarta.
That's the chapter on your phone. Thank you. Thank you. Om Hakyana Timidantasya Gyananjana Shadakaya Chakshurn Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Jatapada Kamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lolita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha E Krishna Koruna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prashabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vanchakulpatarubhyascha Kripasindhobhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. In this chapter, we find 3 pastimes, especially the killing of the Shakatasura, the cart demon, the killing of Trinavarta, the whirlwind demon, and the showing of the universe within the mouth of the Lord. Quite wonderfully. Get this right. Just blew it. Here we go. Quite wonderfully, the Krishna book gives people an understanding of what they have to do to become Krishna conscious. Who is Krishna? Who are we? What is our relationship with Krishna? And what do we have to do to revive that relationship? In the beginning, Srila Prabhupada repeats that Krishna is full of all opulences, and that he appears in various incarnations, and that we therefore have the opportunity to hear about the pastimes the Lord performs in these various incarnations. We have a tendency to hear about someone. We should hear about Krishna, and then our minds will be pleased, and our eternal consciousness will revive. Now we could. The dust is cleansed from the mirror of the mind, and one naturally becomes Krishna conscious. The importance of hearing. Then the impersonalists think of Krishna as an ordinary person, avajananti ma murta, but out of misfortune, they can't accept him as he is. And sometimes they misrepresent themselves as incarnations of God. So Krishna grows up a little bit. This is another pastime, Krishna's birthday, and the Vedic hymns are being chanted, and there's a band, and Brahmins, highly qualified Brahmins, are invited to chant and to receive charity also, very lavish charity. Everyone's dressed very nicely, and there's a very nice function. Krishna is bathed. Essentially, Abhishek is performed. So while all of this is going on, Krishna appeared to be falling asleep, as children will naturally do during all these great ceremonies. Then, so Yashoda put him down on a bed, but she forgot to feed him, so he was hungry and he was crying, but his mother couldn't hear and didn't pay any attention, so the child began kicking with his legs. And while he did so, he kicked over a handcart. From what I would envision, you see these handcarts here in Vrindavan, something like flatbed affairs, and they're quite substantial. You pile them up with subjis or fruits or all kinds of gear, wares for sale. They're quite substantial. And Krishna at this time, this is birthday number 1. Yeah, 2 according to Indian calculation. The first birthday is the day he's born. This is his first birthday anniversary, so it's his second birthday. He's 2 years old, 1 year old. So he's 1 year old, but 1 year 1 year, a child is a baby. And a little child kicking his legs at that age is not going to knock over anything. Maybe a few toys, but that's it. But Krishna kicked his legs and knocked over this handcart, and everything went flying, various brass utensils, brass, I think it mentions, anyway, metal utensils. Yeah, brass and other metals. They were all piled up, and they all scattered and made a big noise, and then everybody came running. The wheel of the cart fell off. The spokes of the wheel were broken, scattered, and everybody's astonished. How could this cart have fallen? What happened? Kya hua? That's what they Kya hua? What happened? And everybody speculated, maybe this, maybe that. And some children were there, and they said, well, Krishna kicked over the cart. How is it possible that Krishna kicked over the cart? But the children, no, we saw. And some people believed what the children had said. But in any case, then others said, how can you believe what these small kids are saying? But in any case, no one could understand that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They just thought of him as a wonderful child. But Prabhupada said both the possible and the impossible were within his power. So then the Brahmins were called in to chant Vedic mantras to ward off evil spirits, and the child was sucking the breast of his mother, which was a good sign, and the men put the cart back up together, and the sacrificial fire ceremony was performed, and everyone worshipped Krishna, worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the good fortune of Krishna. The Brahmins were highly qualified, not envious, never untruthful, never proud. They were nonviolent, never claimed false prestige. So they were bona fide Brahmins, and therefore we would think that their blessings would be effective. The Brahmins were all qualified, but Prabhupada points out that in this age, hardly any Brahmins are qualified. They don't know the Vedic hymns, they don't know how to chant them, and they don't have the purity of consciousness required. So in Kali Yuga, only one kind of sacrifice is recommended, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And again, Prabhupada is giving so much practical knowledge for the readers of the Krishna book, not just theoretical knowledge or a dry academic translation, but practical spiritual guidance, which is really the purpose of the Bhagavatam. So now again, Nanda Maharaj gave huge quantities of grain and cows, and highly decorated, and the Brahmins gave blessings to the child. So then one day, shortly after the ceremony, Mother Jashoda felt the child to be heavy. She had the baby on her lap, but he seemed quite heavy, so she put him on the ground for a while and went about some other household affairs. And at that time, Trinavarta showed up in the form of a great whirlwind. Trinavarta was a demon sent by Kamsa to kill Krishna. Practically every day, Kamsa would send some demon to be killed by Krishna, really. So the Trinavarta spun up a big dust storm here in Vrindavan. Lots of dust, so when you do a whirlwind, the dust will be everywhere and no one could see anything. So even Yashoda couldn't see the child, so she began to cry and fell on the ground like a cow who's just lost her calf. Then all the cowherd people immediately came to look for the child, but they couldn't find him. He'd been taken high into the air by the Trinavarta demon. So the demon did this, took him up into the sky, but Krishna started becoming heavier and heavier and heavier, and became heavier than the demon could bear, but heavy like a mountain, Prabhupada says. And now the demon wanted to get this boy off me, but he couldn't because Krishna was holding him by the neck, and nothing he could do. So he essentially strangled his Trinavarta's eyes popped out from their sockets, and he crashed to the ground of Vrindavan and died. His body hit a stone slab and his limbs were smashed, and all the inhabitants of Vrindavan could see now this great demon. And Krishna playing very happily on the demon's body. For Krishna's point of view, this was fun. We pay money for this, to go on some kind of ride. Then some of the coward men thought that must be due to our past pious activities, whatever past pious activities we've performed, that God has saved our child. And they began speaking, gopis, coward ladies, were speaking among themselves, what austerities and penances we must have performed in our past lives. We must have worshipped Bhagavan and offered sacrifices and given charities and so on, so that we've gotten back our child even though he was supposed to have died. And Nanda Maharaj from his side was thinking of Vasudev and Vasudev's prediction. You'd better get back to Gokul, and something may be happening there. So, a little more. The Shakatasura demon, we should say, it seems that some sort of evil spirit had taken shelter in the cart, in the structure of the cart itself. And so, although it's not very clearly elucidated in the text of Bhagavatam, seems that this demon had taken shelter of the cart, and when the cart was kicked over, then the demon was killed and presumably liberated. So now Shakatasura has been killed, Trinavarta's been killed. Now, one day, Yashoda Mai is nursing the child, and she looks into the mouth of the child and suddenly sees the whole universe. She sees the sky and the mountains and various stars and planets and rivers. And she began to think, this is so wonderful, this is so wonderful. The foolish incarnations can't do anything like this, and still they're claiming that I'm God, you should accept me as the divine incarnation of the Lord. But they're all, to say nothing of being God, they're not even intelligent. They're fools. Questions or comments?
So we've read this chapter dozens of times, and then the picture is there of the Shakatashura demon. But I just noticed as we were reading the text, there's not one word about there being a demon connected to the cart in this particular text. I was just about to look it up in the verses of the Bhagavatam in the 7th chapter. But where does Srila Prabhupada mention the Shakatashura demon connected to the kicked apart cart?
Well, I'm sure if I had my database, we would find such references. And of course, the art was all reviewed by Srila Prabhupada, so that sort of confirms the validity of assuming that there's a demon there. Now, let's see. Let's see what the commentaries say about that. Oh, I see. This is 1077, and really where I have to look is in here. From the Brahmanda Purana, this is Vishnath, it is understood that because of the entrance of the Asura into the cart, the wheels sank into the earth and the cart's height decreased. And that's how Krishna's short legs were able to touch the cart. Let's see if Jiva Goswami, what he says. He also says that. The demon had entered the cart invisibly and was destroyed invisibly. No one saw this happen. Jiva Goswami's commentary on 1077. And there's a comparison Jiva Goswami makes to Lord Krishna's pulling down the twin Arjun trees as a child. He pulled down the Arjun trees, he knocks over this huge cart, and so on.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Something else?
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Maharaj, and also Mataji for wonderful reading. So here we just listen a beautiful description of the power of hearing Krishna's pastimes. But the question may arise, what happens to the heart? Like here we hear that what happens to the heart of those who is listening. But what happens to the hearts of those who is listening Krishna's pastimes, but not from the authorized person and not from the authorized source? Like nowadays we have like a lot of serials, like movies, we have like different books. And Krishna's name is there, Krishna's pastimes is there, but also as it mentioned here, about the people who think Krishna is ordinary person.
What happens when we hear about Krishna's pastimes, various professional reciters or other sorts of readers, television, but it's not from an authorized source? Shravananaiva kartavya sarvojishta yatapaya. What is that in? Yeah. What's the beginning? Avaishnava mukhad kirnam bhutam harikatamritam. Harikatamrita is just like harikatha is just like nectar, but shravananaiva kartavya, one shouldn't hear from the non-Vaishnavas. Sarvojishta yatapaya, just as one shouldn't take milk touched by the lips of a serpent. When we hear from the impersonalists, their interpretations come along with the package. So we hear about the wonderful Krishna's activities of Krishna, who's the personal manifestation of the ultimate impersonal, blah, blah, blah. So we become contaminated. We get the wrong understanding. Or we hear from mental speculators, academics, and others, and we get the impression that Krishna's a fictional hero, or Krishna's an ordinary man who's been glorified in this way, or we get some mundane ideas. And even the sound vibration itself is contaminated because it's coming from a contaminated source. So we shouldn't hear from the materialistic speculators, from the impersonalists, from the non-Vaishnavas. That's the strong direction given by Srila Sanatana Goswami. Now that said, maybe some little benefit for them. Somehow, they could be talking about anything, but somehow they're talking about Krishna. They may be having a scholarly conference, or they may be whatever it is, but they're somehow or other they're attracted to Krishna. So it's a sign of good fortune for them, even though their approach is abhidhi, against the standard conclusions. A little sign of good. Prabhupada even made that comment one time, only once, in Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita, that there's the sahajas who are chanting, making a show of chanting. There's some little good fortune because they're chanting the holy name of Krishna. So one day they may come to the right standard. There's one publisher, famous publisher, and Prabhupada said, he is a Mayavadi, but he is a good gentleman. And that person was worshiping a deity of Krishna, keeping at home or somewhere a deity of Krishna. So Prabhupada said he cannot remain impersonalist forever. Can't remain impersonalist for long because he's worshiping Krishna. So it's a sign of good fortune for them that somehow or other they're interested in Krishna. Even the Paundraka, who was imitating Krishna, he was a nonsense rascal, but he got benefit. That at least could have imitated anyone, could have pretended to be anyone else, could have done any other kind of mischief. Instead, he chose to impersonate Krishna. Some good fortune would have come his way. But we shouldn't hear from these slightly fortunate karmis, gyanis, yogis, and so on. We should hear from the pure devotees. Is that okay?
Thank you, Maharaj. Can I ask one
Yes,
question
of course.
in this connection? So sometimes we may think of ourselves, like I can think of myself as not a Vaishnavi, not qualified, but if we'll be repeating the words of the Vaishnavas without anything coming from our side, any speculation, just repeating, can it be counted as, hearing from the authorized?
There's a letter early on, 1968-ish. There was a girl in the Bahamas named Andrea Temple. And somehow she'd come in touch with devotees, I guess, on the mainland, and was chanting Hare Krishna. And she organized some, get-togethers also, and she was doing kirtan. And she must have asked Srila Prabhupada more or less the question that you did, that I'm not initiated, I'm not really a devotee, I'm just, doing what I'm doing. Will it be effective? And Prabhupada said that it would. He said, you have heard from my disciples and they have heard from me. So certainly it will be effective. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Who else? What else?
In the end of the chapter, Krishna shows the universal form to Mother Yashoda, and it is said that she is then filled with wonderful thoughts. And in connection to Bhagavad Gita, it is a little strange because Arjuna is overcome by anxiety and he wants it to stop. So how come that Mother Yashoda enjoys this universal form?
How is it that Mother Yashoda enjoys seeing universal form when Arjuna was fearful? Different answers. First thing is that it seems that what was shown to Yashoda was different from what Arjuna saw. What we hear is that she saw the universes, she saw the planets, she saw the stars, she saw outer space, she saw so many things like that. And she was astonished. Ooh. But Arjuna saw death. Kalosmi loka kshayakrit pravriddho. Lokan samahartam iha pravritta. I've come as death to destroy all the worlds. And it's described he had fierce teeth and he had fire coming out of his mouth, and all the soldiers were entering into the blazing mouths of the Lord and they were entering in like moths, flying into a fire, and they were being destroyed. And the universal form was like churnitar tamangai, like chewing to powder the bodies of the various soldiers. And that, at first Arjuna was astonished. Ooh. But then the vision morphed, we would say today, changed into this vision of death. And Arjuna, who are you? And why have you come? What's your purpose? So then, yes, I'm death. I've come to destroy everyone. All the soldiers on both sides will be killed. So what he saw and what she saw were different. And so the response was different. Just so you know, you're in Vrindavan. Cacophony, yes. Then also, Krishna's purpose was different. And so his internal energy worked differently. So that Yashoda, he was just was overawed by seeing this wonderful sight within Krishna's mouth. But Arjuna was fearful and offered prayers to the Lord. Yes. Something else?
Hare Krishna. Is the universal form Duryodhana? So is it the same? The universal form which Duryodhana. So is it equal or the same? Like
no, it's also different. Prabhupada comments. When Krishna went to Hastinapur as a Shanti Dut, as a peace messenger on behalf of the Pandavas. Can we avoid this needless war? And Duryodhana arrogantly ordered his men to arrest this coward boy, Krishna. And then Krishna showed a universal form. You want to arrest me? Well, it's not so easy. He showed a universal form. But Srila Prabhupada comments that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, what is that? Napurva Drishtaya, like that. No one before you has seen this form. When Krishna showed it to Arjuna, and Drishtapurvaya, like that. So the Prabhupada comments that the form shown to Duryodhana must have been different. Otherwise, Krishna wouldn't have said that. How different? Again, death, that form was shown to Arjuna. That's not mentioned in connection with Duryodhana. And in other particulars of the form shown, it must have differed. Now, Krishna can show different kinds of universal manifestations under different circumstances. Something else? Adrishtapurvaya Vishitosmi Drishtva. Arjuna said, and then Krishna also I think said, no one before you has seen this. Adrishtapurvaya, unseen before. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Rukmini.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was thinking about this point of Arjuna seeing the universal form and seeing death and how it shows that the fear comes about. Then I'm also thinking of Kadambakana Maharaj and how often he said, he's not afraid.
Yes.
And I understand that from a devotee perspective, that's where we'd like to be, unafraid of death. But then I'm thinking also personally, my dad passed away a year ago. And every time I think of that experience of seeing him dwindle and go through that experience, it's still heavy. So is that illusion? Is that Maya? Or because
Yes.
Arjuna is also seeing with fear.
Arjuna is also...
He also sees death and has that sort of...
Well, first it is yes, it's illusion. Bhayat vitiyam pinibeshita syat. In the Bhagavatam, fear and death is synonymous with fear. Comes about because of seeing something other than Krishna. If Krishna is everything, then what is death? The death is also Krishna. Prabhupada told us that one time in his householder life, this war was going on, I guess some aspect of World War II, and bombs were being dropped on Calcutta. And Prabhupada was eating some kachoris, I think. And the protocol was that when they sounded the sirens, then you would hide away in your basement or whatever. You would go to some safe place. But Prabhupada said, I was seeing all of this as being like the universal form, bombs dropping and whatever. Plus, it seemed he didn't want to be interrupted from honoring that kachori or those kachoris. So that's also there. Krishna is there, so what is the problem? If Krishna wants to kill me, then good. That's one way of getting Krishna's association in the form of death. So from one point of view, it's Maya. In the Bhagavatam, it's said that the conditioned soul is in difficulty, like a person seeing his head cut off in a dream. We're seeing so many frightful things, coronavirus and all kinds of threats to our life. But these are fearful only because we're seeing something other than Krishna. We're like a person seeing his head cut off in a dream. If I can see my head being cut off, it must mean my head is okay. So from that point of view, all the miseries and sufferings and all this drama, it has no substantiality. It has no, like a child. Prabhupada said, child is having a nightmare and he's crying and he's so afraid and distressed. And the parents come into the room, that's all right, and they're smiling. Why are you smiling? Well, they know the child is just having a bad dream, everything is all right, there's no tiger, there's no mountain cliff to fall off of, everything is all right, and they're smiling. So from that point of view, yes, death is illusory, birth is illusory. We have nothing to do with all of these changes from one body to another body. Therefore, dhira stacha namuyati. A sober person is not bewildered by this change of body, or Kanamakana said, change of service, changing from one body to another. From another point of view, the devotee, we were hearing yesterday, I believe it was, that when there's some danger, then the devotee very rapidly remembers Krishna. Weren't we hearing that yesterday? Prithu Prabhu was saying that in the morning. In any case, we were hearing it yesterday, one time or another, that I thought it was in the evening, but very rapidly the devotee remembers Krishna when there's some danger. So from that point of view, death is favorable. When there's some calamity, when there's death, when there's this, that, then the devotee says, I have to take shelter of Krishna. I have to. Automatically, the residents of Vrindavan were spontaneously taking shelter of Krishna very rapidly. when the Govardhan attack was there by Indra in the Govardhan Leela. And all the Brajvasis just spontaneously, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Whenever some demon comes, Krishna, Krishna, please save us. So death is an opportunity to come closer to Krishna from that point of view. The example given is that death or the forces of material nature are for the non-devotee like the cat carrying a rat in its mouth. The cat carries the rat, and that's the end of the rat. The jaws of the cat are death for the rat. But the same cat carries a kitten in its mouth, and the kitten's feeling very happy. So even death itself, for the devotee, knows that I'm under Krishna's protection. Everything's all right. About Dhruva Maharaj, it's said that death came to get him, and the flower airplane had come to take Dhruva to Vaikuntha. So Dhruva took the opportunity to step on death's head, like a step to get into the airplane. They don't have this on Air India or Indigo or any of these. But for the flower airplane, they had Death himself appearing and providing a convenient step for Dhruva Maharaj to use to get into the plane. So from that point of view, everything is favorable for the devotee. Srila B.R. Sridhar Maharaj used to say that the entire environment is friendly. The entire environment is friendly. Because Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Krishna is everything. So what is the difficulty? Is that okay? Anything else? Yes. Yes. Whichever way the microphone's going.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. It is a little bit longer question. Recently, few of my friends, I will read because my English is not so good.
You have to keep it close. And
recently, few of my friends, one very close to me, took initiations in different Babaji lines. And leaving ISKCON and their gurus commenting that these gurus, our gurus, are practicing actually Vaidhi Bhakti, not Raganuga Bhakti. So that is confusing me, what that means when they say that. And they are speaking that these Babaji lines are traditional and truthful in a way of practicing bhakti through this idea of a from Siddha position. But the other day you mentioned something very interesting to me because I never heard that before, that Gopal Guru was bringing this idea, and it is not bona fide because there are no references in the scriptures. So I would like, if you can, to elaborate a little bit about that.
Okay, so why don't we start with that we're practicing Vaidhi instead of Raganuga. So what is Vaidhi? What is Raganuga? That's the first question. Vaidhi comes from the word vidhi. Vidhi means rules and regulations. So Vaidhi Bhakti is the early step of Bhakti, where one practices reviving one's Krishna consciousness by following various rules and regulations. As a matter of, you have to do it. I'm your guru and I'm telling you to do this. Now this is what you do. You don't have any spontaneous attraction. You're not in ecstasy. but you know your guru has told you that you should do this, so you say, all right, Gurudev, I'll do it. That's called Vaidhi Bhakti. Or the scriptures have said, I'm your scripture and I'm telling you, this is what you should do, this is what you should do, this is what you should do. And you read it and you say, okay, that's what I should do, I'll do it. It's a matter of obligation. So Vaidhi Bhakti is practicing according to the rules and regulations out of obedience to the spiritual master of the scriptures. That's called Vaidhi Bhakti. And within Vaidhi Bhakti, it takes practical shape. We get up early in the morning, we attend the Mangalarti ceremony, we chant Hare Krishna, we follow some restrictive rules, we chant on our beads a prescribed number of rounds, we attend a daily class in Srimad Bhagavatam, we come and as we say, greet the deities, we attend the Darshanarti, what else do? We honor prasadam, that's part of Vaidhi Bhakti also. We accept the flowers offered to the deities, we chant Hare Krishna and Kirtan, we take Charanamrita offered to the deities, we offer prayers to the deities. In the Nectar of Devotion, you'll find so many different things that one should do as a matter of regulative principles. Under Vaidhi Bhakti, we're worshiping Tulsi, that's part of Vaidhi Bhakti, worshiping the Tulsi plant. Many, many, many items. Out of all these, there's 64 items. And out of these, 5 are especially important to associate with devotees, to worship the deity, hear Srimad Bhagavatam from devotees, chant Hare Krishna, and to live in a place in Vrindavan or a place like Vrindavan. These are especially important. But all these rules and regulations are there. So following these rules and regulations, one makes progress. Okay, and now I'm following 4 regulative principles, I'm chanting 16 rounds a day, I'm getting up early and seeing the deities, I'm hearing about Krishna from the classes. All of these things are purifying my consciousness. Because since time immemorial, since no one knows how long we've been moving from one lifetime, another lifetime on account of our material desires and attachments, because of our illusions, because of our envy. So the heart needs to be cleansed. And following these regulative principles helps us clean our hearts. And Shravanadi Shuddhachitte Koriye Udoy, Krishna Prema, love for Krishna, gradually arises from following these principles, starting with hearing. Prabhupada was emphasizing here how important it is to hear. I may not want to hear. I'd rather, look at my Facebook feed. But the Guru has said you should hear. So, all right, let me hear. But by hearing, we become purified. That's called Vaidhi Bhakti. Now, Raganuga means spontaneous devotional service. Raganuga. One comes to the mature stage of actual love for Krishna. Now the heart is no longer so dirty and filthy. It's become purified. And when the heart is purified, one's natural love for Krishna comes out. That's what's there, Your windshield is dirty. So when you clean it, then you see what's outside of your car or inside of your car, depending which way you're looking. It's already there. You're not putting it in. You're just cleaning so that you can see it. Or my spectacles, when they're dirty, all I see is dots and fog. But when they're clean, then I see what's there. This is the mature stage. So in the mature stage, there's actual love for Krishna. And then spontaneously one wants to serve Krishna in all sorts of ways. And that comes out mostly internally. We don't see, the ordinary person doesn't see what's going on, but within your heart there's love for Krishna. And externally you're engaged in activities of devotional service. You're still following the principles, the rules, but now even though you're following these rules and regulations, it's no longer a matter of duty. Now it's out of love and out of enthusiasm. I love to hear Bhagavatam. I love to see the deity and everything. And it comes to the high stage, one realizes that because I'm an eternal servant of Krishna in a particular relationship. Someone's in a relationship as a friend, someone's in relationship as a parent, someone's relationship as a wife, someone's relationship as lover of Krishna. So in the mature stage, one realizes that, and one wants to follow in the footsteps of a particular devotee in Vrindavan who's performing that kind of service. And one is eager to hear more about that kind of service. That's in the very exalted stage. That's what Vaidhi and Rag Bhakti are, in very brief summary. And they're described in the Nectar of Devotion. Nectar of Devotion is your guide to all these topics. So that's what they are. So, all right, now some people have given up their ISKCON gurus because they're just following Vaidhi, and we want Rag. Rag is not so easy. Rag is not so easy. It comes about, or it arises in the purified heart. When the heart is completely pure, or practically completely pure, then these things automatically on their own develop. They automatically come on their own. You can't force them, you can't, pretend, and then somehow your pretending becomes real. It's not like that. But in the mature stage, these things come. If we try it in the immature stage, it's just a joke. Prabhupada gave the example that I remember in my family, we had a walk-in closet. That is to say, my parents had a walk-in closet. And in the walk-in closet, there were, their various clothes and this and that, including things like high-heeled shoes. And I have a younger sister, 2 years younger than me. My sister couldn't wear those shoes when she was like 5 or 7 or 10. That she could maybe put them on her feet and wobble and fall over, but she couldn't walk around in those things. Now, if she wants, she could do that. But as a child, if you try to do that, it's just funny. It's just funny. And so many other things are like that, that if a child tries to be an adult, there's an amazing picture by what is her name? Diane. Ooh, I've forgotten her name. She's a very famous photographer, and she's known for having photographed sort of anomalous things. I've forgotten her name. It's not that. And it's probably not Diane either. But she would see things sort of out of the ordinary in personal people that were out of the ordinary or behaving oddly, and she would catch it on film. And she had this picture of these sort of a like couple of, not even teenagers, you know, they're like sub-teenagers, but the guy's like a tough guy and he's wearing a, you know, a tough guy's coat. And you seen that picture? And yeah, maybe he's smoking or something. He's just a kid, but he's like, you know, as if he were like 25 and he was one of these tough guys in the movies or something. And you look at it and it's, yeah, bless your heart. Diane, I was right, Diane Arbus. So there they are, you know, his like looking all of like 35 or something, but I don't know if he's 12 or whatever it is. You can pass it around, Diane Arbus. And she, so it's a little funny, but when you see the picture, it's also pretty sad. You know, here are these little kids who are somehow or other really serious about pretending to be something that they're not. And it's premature, you know, later they could, if they were like that, you'd say, okay, that's the kind of people they are. But at that age, it's kind of pathetic. So, so now we come to this path of Raganuga Bhakti for newcomers. You know, what is it? You know, calculus for beginners or calculus for dummies, but at least for beginners. So they're really beginners on the path of devotional service. And they go to Radhakunda, or they go here or there, and all of a sudden, your name is Sumukhi Manjari, and your dress is yellow, and you wear green earrings, and your service is to cut back the bushes where Radha and Krishna will meet. And, you know, and you should meditate always on your eternal identity and all of this. That's called Siddha Pranali. So they're given this meditation, and okay, this is where you go. As I mentioned in the other class, this was not taught by Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, any of the 6 Goswamis. It's not found in their literature at all. Their very extensive literature. It's not found. It's not found in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's not found in our usual scriptures. But we hear that this path was...
We hear, for example, that Raghunath Das Goswami is actually in Vilapakusumanjali going into that state of
in the mature stage, one does these things, but not that this is sort of what you do to get started. In the mature stage, yes, we hear about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You know, I was picking flowers for Radha and Krishna. He goes into ecstasy and sees these things. So in the mature stage, spontaneously, automatically, and naturally, one's eternal identity is disclosed by the mercy of Krishna. And then these things are there. And then one doesn't advertise it. These things are not for advertising, they're for one's own appreciation. But we hear that this path of receiving your identity from a guru, at initiation, and then meditating always on these things from the get-go as a method of sadhana. But this was taught by Gopal Guru Goswami, who is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita and who's a respected follower of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it's not taught by Rup Sanatan, but it's a bona fide process because it's taught by Gopal Guru Goswami. So then the question is, how do we know that it was taught by Gopal Guru Goswami? Well, Gopal Guru Goswami hasn't written anything about this. So how do we know? Well, his disciple, maybe principal disciple or not principal, I don't remember, Dhyan Chandra Goswami, has written a book explaining all these things, apparently with reference to Gopal Guru Goswami. So it's coming in disciplic succession from the disciple. That's how we know. That's the story we hear. Now, my grand disciple, Gopinath Acharya, who none of you missed when he was here, is a scholar. He teaches at Oxford University, and he's an excellent scholar, very well informed. His specialty is Gaudiya Vaishnavism. His thesis was published recently by Oxford University Press concerning the poetry of Kavi Karnapur. So although he's a young scholar, he's already very respected. And what he told me is that we don't hear about this manuscript. I forget if he told me we don't even hear about Dhyan Chandra Goswami, but in any case, we don't hear about this manuscript at all till, I believe he said, the late 18th century. Usually, like, I've written a book. So, you'll find somebody talking about my book, someone's reviewed my book, someone might read on YouTube a little clip of the book, their reviews of the book and so on. It goes around and people know, okay, Jayadvaita Swami's written a book. And back in the old days, without Zoom and all of that, a similar thing would go on. So, for example, Kaviraj Goswami writes, these are the books of the Goswamis, and he talks about them, and there's excerpts from them, and there's, a lot of, I guess you'd say, cross-pollination or a lot of references. If somebody writes a really good book or important book or controversial book or any kind of thing, and he's a substantial person, then it's going to be discussed among the other followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, among the other Vaishnavas, or even outside of Mahaprabhu, just as Chaitanya Charitamrita reference is made to Ballabha Bhatt, who figures into Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, Ballabhacharya. So you'd expect that if he'd written this manuscript in the 1500s or whatever, there would be people talking about it. Nothing. Total silence till we get to, again, if I remember, like the late 18th century. Then another thing is, you'd expect a lot of manuscripts, right? These manuscripts were copied so that people could have access to them. They didn't have press Control P for print, but they had their ways. I was hearing again from Gopinath Acharya that one devotee is doing a doctoral thesis about Hari Bhakti Vilas, and he's translating from Hari Bhakti Vilas. And so as a serious scholar, he's looked to see what the variants are. For Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which we published, Gopi Pranadhana referred to I think 3 or 5 different manuscripts, and one of the manuscripts refers to 4 more manuscripts. That's what you do as a scholar. You collect all the available manuscripts, which inevitably have some differences between them and so on, because you want to get, all right, a critical edition. You want to get the right, what's the state of this text? So Gopinath Acharya Prabhu told me that this devotee so far he's collected like 100 manuscripts of Hari Bhakti Vilas, going back all the way till who knows when. And in fact, it's interesting, he said that from different regions, there's different verses, some extras have been added here and there. So you have to sort of sort your way through these 100 manuscripts and say, well, okay, which verses do we have confidence in, and so on. This is what goes on in scholarship, whether it's biblical literature, Gaudiya Vaishnava literature, Shakespeare, you name it. We look at the old manuscripts and we see what's going on. So what's going on with this Gyan Chandra Goswami's explanation of Siddha Pranali? There's one manuscript. One. It's in the Vaishnava Research Institute. It's the only existing manuscript.
How then is possible that that manuscript became the part, as they say, the most and truthful, traditional way of practicing bhakti yoga? That is all of parivars are, except the Gadadhar parivar. They are all just mentioning
all the parivars, all the Vaishnava families, except the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they all accept this. First of all, not really true. But this one manuscript, just to finish the story, is also like late 18th century. Just as you can see today, well, this was typed by a Remington typewriter, which of the kind that they had in 1948, an expert forensic researcher can see that. So you can see the state of a manuscript. A manuscript done in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time or the time of the Goswamis looks very different from an 18th century manuscript. There's one manuscript, it comes in the 18th century, late 18th century if I recall. Nobody talks about it till then. So what does that tell you? The likelihood that this is an authentic manuscript from the 15th century written by Gopal is pretty doubtful. And everything rests on that text. So a traditional Gaudiya Vaishnavism with no evidence for it from before the late 18th century, from one manuscript, that's not a strong case. I mentioned Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Sanatana Goswami. There were at least 5 manuscripts that Gopi Pranadhana referred to, and I don't think he worked really hard going through all the original, oldest, da-da-da-da-da. But it's there. So this is the reasonable conclusion is that only that the manuscript on which this traditional Gaudiya Vaishnavism is based came out of the late 18th century. That's the first thing. The idea that all the Vaishnavas follow it is simply not true. If you go to Radharamana temple, they're not following this. If you go to Radha Damodar temple, they're not following this. If you go to so many, they're not following this. If you go to Radhakund, everybody's following this. But it's simply not true that this is going on everywhere. Generally, the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, follow Rupa Goswami. Therefore, we're known as Rupanugas. And all except the Gaudiyas. Well, Gopal Guru is supposed to be a Gaudiya also. What are they saying when they say all except the Gaudiyas? Maybe they mean all except the followers of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I guess that's what they mean. But the Gaudiya Vaishnavas follow Rupa and Sanatan. That's like the definition of Gaudiya practically. They follow Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Raghunath Das, Raghunath Bhatta, Swarup Damodar Goswami. Not the whole world, they're all following Gopal Guru Goswami. No. He's respected, but we don't know all that much about what he did teach, and the likelihood that he taught this seems pretty thin. That's the next thing. The next thing is that just inherently for people of that level to be jumping up to that level is catastrophic.
I saw that.
It's just bad. And especially for girls to be going to Radhakund and pursuing this is not good. There was a young gentleman, I believe his name was Madhavananda Das. I wouldn't sign an affidavit, but I think that was his name. He'd been an ISKCON devotee, if I recall, and he became attracted to what he was hearing from the Radhakund Babajis, and he went there. And he lived there for quite a number of years, as I recall, some years, several years. He was an expert in web technology, among other things. So he made some beautiful websites for whoever he was following there. And he did some credible, some sort of semi-scholarly. I don't think he was a trained scholar, but he had a scholarly nature, and he produced some, made some texts accessible and so on. He was an intelligent fellow, but he was attracted there. And after some years, he left because he was appalled to find out what so many of those Babajis were doing. And without going into the gory details, they were breaking one of the regulative principles regularly, and I'll let you guess which one. So for the girls who are your friends to be going there is not only unwise, but perhaps unsafe. Because that's where this goes, We're like wearing our mother's shoes at an early age, or we're pretending to be, in these loving relationships with Krishna. Especially, we're not going to mess around with servanthood, friendship, and parental love. We're going to go for the top, aren't we? So it's going to be conjugal love, and we're all going to be immersed in thoughts of conjugal love, but we don't have pure hearts. So where does that go? That goes to conjugal love under the jurisdiction of the material energy, which is what that young fellow saw sort of when he was close up at Radhakund. Now, maybe there's someone who's not, I didn't go there and I didn't see everyone, and I'm not going to say that everybody's doing that, but that was what he saw as a prevailing problem at Radhakund. And Prabhupada had said the same thing, and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Prabhupada would see us going to Radhakund, he'd see someone coming back with that gray Radhakund. Where have you gone? Who has given you permission? Who did you meet there? What did they say? You know, because he knew that this was a dangerous place to go, because we would risk becoming contaminated by all these things. So, of course, we all want rag bhakti, we all want prem bhakti, but one has to go there step by step. And if we jump, probably called it jumping, we'll crash. We'll crash. We have to go patiently, go step by step. Then we'll reach the top. But if we try to do somersaults to land in Goloka Vrindavan, we'll wind up crashing.
I heard actually that those practices are not so much into conjugal love, but they are just making like they have their color of the clothes in initiation they get. They are supposed to do some kind of service like fanning or massaging feet of Radharani.
And of course, in their
and they
eternal
have
life,
to meditate on that every morning.
yeah.
And one person told me, he's an older devotee who is practicing that, and he told me, nothing is there. He's doing that for a very long time, actually.
Oh, that's good. The prescribed meditation is not tantric. It's not something that involves sex, but it's meditation on these high topics. And for a person who's immature, where does the mind go when we think of these things? You know, because we don't know what the real thing is. Our only experiences of the reflected thing. The real thing we can know also when Krishna reveals it. But just being told your cloth is yellow, your service is to sweep the bowers of Vrindavan, and da. That's not really that's not how my eternal identity will be revealed, according to the Goswamis. You know, it will be revealed Sevan Mukhehi Jivano, by our service.
Because their emphasis is on that we should be like, because we are very much into that we are this body, we should meditate on the other body, and one day we will have that body. It's like that. I heard that.
That's all true, but that's in the mature stage. That's in the mature stage. Srila B.R. Sridhar Maharaj used to quote Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur as saying, we'll keep these things above our heads. We'll keep these things above our heads. That's the safe position, to worship these things from the lower position. And then the mercy will descend down and we'll be uplifted to that. But if we think that we'll just jump in, no, it doesn't work that way. We'll hold these things above our head. That's the path shown by our acharyas.
Thank you very much for the nice answer. Can I ask something about one small question connected to this topic? Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he also had that initiation in Siddha Pranali or not? Can you explain the situation with that? Because
as far as I know, he also practiced these things in the mature stage. You know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he can do these things. We're not anything like Bhaktivinoda. You know, we just got here. We're not like these Brajbasis. You know, they may not be following all the this and that, but they're born in Braj. They have this natural culture of Krishna consciousness that's, you know, pervading the whole Braj area. And okay, you know, things are kind of like a little funny with them sometimes because they're not exactly following, but they have this natural thing, sort of a spontaneous enthusiasm for Krishna. And they're very fortunate because but you know, somebody comes from Bulgaria or from London or New York or Nicaragua or someplace. And, they hardly know, which hand to eat with. They just learned that a few years ago. And now all of a sudden, they're Bhaktivinoda, they're in the same league as Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So we're not able to recommend that shortcut. If Rupa Goswami says, Utsaha Nishchayat Dharyat, Tat Tat Karma Pravartana, and patience. Enthusiasm, but patience. Prabhupada gave the example that a woman gets married and she, next day, where's my child? It takes a little time. Is that okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
It is very helpful.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Same topic or something else?
Yes,
Okay, we're extending because it's an important topic.
okay, Hare Krishna. I'm wondering, what if a person leaves the bona fide guru and goes? What is the consequences for the person who leaves the bona fide guru and goes and takes diksha with like Babaji, Radhakund, and something?
They're making a mistake. That they give up competent guidance, authorized guidance, to try their fortune with this uncertain and doubtful traditional. They're actually giving up traditional Gaudiya Vaishnavism for the branded traditional Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And they're certainly to give up the guru is not at all. Even for one who, let's say, is properly initiated and in his mature stage, he wants to seek guidance in higher progress or something. He'll do it with the blessings of his guru. He'll do it with the guru says, I'm sending you here, or you have my blessings to go here. Now he's going to make some progress. Now he'll make some progress. Yes, the guru thinks that now I can. But if he thinks, well, my guru's just a neophyte, he doesn't know up from down. I'm going to Radhakund where they, where the good stuff is, where the real thing is, where the traditional Gaudiya Vaishnavism is. He's blundering. And yes, it's Guru Avagya to disregard the orders, the direction of the spiritual master. So that's the most serious error on the path. They want to be sort of in the spiritual sky with Radha and Krishna, at least in their meditation. But in their actions, they've just offended the person who's helped them get as far as they've come. Even if they say, well, that wasn't my guru, that was Prabhupada. Well, they've just turned their back on Prabhupada's direction also, and their guru. So it's a very unfortunate blunder in spiritual life. Shall we have a little kirtan? Same topic, something? Oh my goodness. Should we take another? Okay, well. We will stop at some point.
Hare Krishna. I heard that Raganuga Bhakti is not possible in the society.
You've heard that Raganuga Bhakti is not possible in society.
Because it will create just a disturbance.
Because it would just create a disturbance. I haven't seen anything to that effect. Raganuga Bhakti is internal. It doesn't create any disturbance in society because hardly anyone knows about it. If within your heart you're thinking of Krishna in the particular kind of advanced love, it doesn't disturb anyone because no one knows about it.
It was also mentioned that, like in the case of Lord Nityananda, that it was for the society it was some kind of disturbance because he showed this.
Well, Lord Nityananda's behavior, he's called avadhuta, because he acted in unconventional ways. He didn't follow the rules of society. It's called avadhut. But one doesn't have to be an avadhuta to practice Raganuga Bhakti. Not practice, because you don't really practice, but to be absorbed in Raganuga Bhakti. There is practice of Raganuga, but that's another story. Nor if you're an avadhuta do you necessarily get involved in Raganuga. If you're in Raganuga, you're not necessarily an avadhuta, and vice versa. Srila Prabhupada was certainly on the highest stage of bhakti, and he moved in society. He moved in society. Moved in, apart from our society. He moved about and appeared in television engagements, spoke at universities, spoke at so many pandal programs and here and there, and went on morning walks in places like New York City and London. He was very much in society. Didn't disturb anyone in terms of, creating a mess. No, it's simply not so.
Because that on a certain point you will show some, like Prabhupada, he didn't show any symptoms that he had this kind of bhavas and whatever, or very, very rarely. But when someone will show this automatically, the symptoms, then
well, that's a different thing. That creates a problem. You get these people who are in love of Krishna, and they're, falling on the ground and crying and leaping and embracing the deity and dancing with the in kirtan with the deity, and that will create all kinds of disturbance because it's a show. They want Dhanam Janam Sundarim. They want recognition and profit and female companionship and all of that. So they make a show. Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidimbana Ikantiki Harir Bhaktir Utpataya Rukalpate. They don't follow the rules and regulations. And so their so-called bhakti, Sanatana Goswami points out, just creates a disturbance.
So when have real Raganuga Bhakti, and he will also, like you said, Prabhupada had Raganuga Bhakti, but of course, but he didn't show it.
He didn't wear it on his sleeve,
Yes. Is he hiding it or? Yes. Yeah. And this is the point.
That's the point, that an advanced devotee doesn't broadcast.
Yes.
Last night I was in the kunja with Radha and Krishna, and I saw this and I saw that, and now I'm dancing and crying. Yeah, it's just a fake. There was some man came into the temple and he, was like rolling on the ground and crying. Prabhupada said, you should have kicked him.
he will reveal his true self, otherwise he will be like, same.
So, real advancement is different. It's not worn as a party dress. It's not worn as a party dress. The devotees strive to keep this within themselves. Sometimes it may overflow, but even then, it's, not like not often seen and not made into a, impress your friends, be the first on your block.
I don't want to drag it out too much, but there are so many GBC resolutions and so many guides of different things that need to be dealt with within the Society of ISKCON. So many departments to manage the behavior of devotees. But I've never seen any resolution or any determination to stop this from going on, this external show of Raganuga Bhakti. No one's really talking about, and I mean, it is happening in ISKCON. There's one godbrother of yours who's going around very vigorously and advertising what a Raganuga Bhakta he is. Mm. And then if you say, well, that doesn't sound correct, he'll get extremely angry. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of...
well, I'm not in the management, to say nothing of the GBC, of being in the GBC. So I have no role in government and legislation and all of those things. I'm just a student and a teacher. So these are the things I heard from Srila Prabhupada and authoritative sources. So I'm repeating these things. I don't know, we pass resolutions and people ignore them or they get angry. So I have nothing to say about the resolutions or lack thereof. I'm just not involved in that aspect of things. But I'm involved in just, here's what Srila Prabhupada was teaching, and so I'm repeating that. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. And now, with thanks to all, should we have a little kirtan? Maybe not 20 minutes of kirtan, but a little kirtan at least. And by kirtan, Chaito Darpan and Marjanam, the heart becomes purified and we become eligible for these things one day. Someone new? Someone who hasn't chanted before? You don't have to be professional in my class anyway. If you know the words and you get them in the right order. Why not? You can't. Okay. Sorry, you want to chant?
Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Himande Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane
Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Himande Bhakti Vedanta
Oravani Bhaktarine Nirvishesha Shunyavani Pasyatya Desha Dharine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare
Anta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kundagiri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Jamuna Mai ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Thank you all very much, and we'll continue tomorrow, maybe not at such great length. And we still have some books here, and thank you again. Hare Krishna.